and welcome to More Than Clothes with me, your host, Sarah Ryan. In this podcast, we'll explore the connection between style, identity, confidence, and mindset, and why getting dressed is never just about clothes. Welcome back to the podcast this week. Last week, we talked about criticism. We specifically talked about why some women criticize other women, and I gave you that example of Jennifer Lopez. If you didn't listen to that, I'd encourage you to go back and do so because it links in really nicely with what we're going to talk about today. Just to briefly recap on what we did talk about beyond women criticizing women, we also talked about why visible women often attract opinions, and why the criticism often says more about the person who's actually delivering that criticism rather than the person receiving it. But today I want to explore what happens when we internalize those opinions. So some of us have got really good at understanding that no matter what we do, some people will have opinions, some people will voice their opinions. They may not be nice, but we get on with it and we say, you know what, that opinion doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do my thing anyway. There's huge freedom in that. I've talked about that in previous episodes. However, many of us will internalize these opinions, and that brings us to the danger zone. Because criticism doesn't just affect confidence, it affects behavior, it affects decisions, and over time, that affects identity. So we may think to ourselves, oh, I don't care about people's opinions, but does your behavior say something different? Do the decisions that you're making about your clothes say something different? One of the places I see where these opinions have internalized in a person, it's in a woman's wardrobe. So I will have calls with clients and they'll tell me where they're struggling. And they'll say things like, I've lost my style. I maybe never had style. I'm in a style rut. I don't know what suits me anymore. I'm now X age and I don't want to look like I'm still in my 20s. But often that's not the real problem at all. But there's a real danger here because if you go to, let's say, a stylist or you go into a shop and you say these things to the stylist, to the person in the shop, and you say, I'm in a style rut, I've lost my style. And they go, oh, I know what we'll do. I'm going to pull some things out here. I'm going to put them on you and everything will be brilliant. And you think, God, that's fantastic. I'll be fixed in the afternoon. But of course, that's not how it works because you get that instant hit of dopamine. You're placing all of your trust in this person, this stylist, the shop owner to give you the right information. And you may have just met them. They don't know you from Adam. They don't know anything about your history, your beliefs, your experiences, who you want to be going forward. They don't know your identity. So you might get a short-term result in that you'll go, oh yeah, I feel really good now. You'll bring home the clothes and you'll take the tags off. And then over time, you'll realize that those clothes are still in the wardrobe. You can't return them. You haven't been wearing them and you don't know why. And you think it's your fault. It is not your fault. It's just because the wrong issue was addressed. The real issue often is that somewhere along the way in life, you stopped giving yourself permission. We'll come back to that in just a second, but I have a few questions that I want to ask you and just have a think on them, see what your answers are, see what comes up. So, do you ever stand in front of your wardrobe full of clothes and just feel uninspired? Do you wear the same few outfits on repeat, maybe repeating 10 to 20% of your wardrobe, and then the majority of the wardrobe is left unworn? Does everything technically work, but nothing feels exciting or nothing feels like you? Do you feel like you've become disconnected from your style? Maybe you used to have style and you don't know what happened in the years that have gone by. If you've answered yes to these questions, you're not alone. It's one of the most common things I hear from women that I work with. And I think many people misunderstand what's actually happening here. When I talk to women on calls, they assume that they're in a style rut because something is wrong. They recognize that. But they think the thing that's wrong is that they've become boring, they've lost their creativity, or they feel like they don't have any. They might have lost their confidence along the way. They might feel like they need more clothes or better clothes. They feel like they need like an overhaul, a complete makeover. But style ruts are often just evidence that you've grown. Think about everything that changes over a lifetime or even in a short space of time. I mean, let's take 2026 now. Let's think about pre-COVID, post-COVID. So we're talking about a 6-year, 7-year span. A lot can change in that time. Some of those changes might look like career changes. You might have retired, you might have lost your job, changed job, going back to a job after maybe a break for health reasons or having children. Relationships were tested over the last few years. Maybe yours didn't make it. Maybe you're looking for a new relationship. Your body may have changed over the last 6 or 7 years. I know mine has. Your confidence may have changed. Your priorities, your values, all of these things fall under the umbrella of your identity. You're not supposed to be the same person you were 6 or 7 years ago. So why would your style stay exactly the same? Our style needs to evolve with us. It doesn't mean an overhaul by any means, but there needs to be adjustments along the way so that you don't end up in a style rut. And I tell my clients that when we work together, there's no end date where you say, aha, I have it all figured out and I never have to think about this again. That's not the case. As long as you were growing, evolving, your style needs to as well. Think of your wardrobe as a snapshot in time. It reflects who you were when you bought those clothes. And if you can think of something in your wardrobe and you remember buying it, and you think, gosh, am I the same person? If it was a good number of years ago, 5 years plus, you've probably noticed some changes in yourself. And that item may not work for the person you are today or the person you're becoming. At some point, those clothes probably felt right. They may have reflected your lifestyle, your confidence at the time, your priorities, your identity. The problem happens when you evolve, but the wardrobe doesn't. Your wardrobe needs to be a living, breathing thing, just as you are. And so you find yourself standing between two versions of yourself. The woman you were and the woman you're becoming. And that can be really confusing because you're saying to yourself, no, I'm the same person. This simply means that there has been growth. And growth is a good thing. The difficulty here is making those changes because you're in a place of uncertainty. And just like we talked about last week, you're afraid of getting it wrong and maybe afraid of what people might say, the criticism that inevitably comes with you being more visible. Most women don't realize how many people are still living rent-free inside your wardrobe. Think about this. Have you ever had maybe a teacher who criticized you? A family member who maybe told you like not to show off, or maybe they criticized you too. Maybe a friend made a comment somewhere along the way. A stranger who may have laughed. An ex-partner who chipped away at your confidence. Maybe even a comment on your YouTube channel, just like I had. The comments may have happened yesterday or they may have happened years ago. But we still ask ourselves, is this too much? Am I too old? Will people stare? Will people laugh? What will they think? These invisible critics slowly narrow your choices until eventually your wardrobe becomes less about self-expression and more about self-protection. And it's very understandable that you do want to protect yourself from that kind of criticism, of course. Nobody wants to be criticized, even if you're confident. I consider myself quite a confident person and I take risks in my style and I don't really care what people think. But even that day when I read that YouTube comment that I got, it still stung. Even when you build up your confidence, it can still sting. And nobody wants that. But there is a cost to playing it safe. Staying in your comfort zone does not mean you're going to be safe from everything. Because the problem with dressing purely for approval is that approval has no finish line. It's not guaranteed. No matter what you wear, somebody will have an opinion. And the safer you try to become, the smaller your world becomes. Think about it. Over the years, have you stopped experimenting, maybe going for the same type of styles time and time again? When's the last time you explored a new shop? You look at a store and think, oh, there's nothing in that for me, without even stepping across the door. You stop expressing yourself and eventually you stop recognizing yourself. You look in the mirror and say, who is that? How did I get here? So a style rut is most often not a clothing problem at all. It's self-expression and it's an identity problem. So yes, if you're stepping out of the comfort zone and you're becoming more visible, you're taking risks, there's a higher chance that people might have opinions that you don't like. But likewise, you can stay put, but there are consequences to that as well. And you've got to realize where the tipping point is and which one is worse. Think about a stadium for a moment, an arena. Okay. So in this game, you've got people in the stands taking a seat and you have people in the arena. Now, they have very different roles, the people in the stands and the people in the actual arena playing the game. The people in the arena are the ones who are creating, they are trying, they're experimenting, they're failing, they're learning, they're growing. When we compare this to the people in the stands are watching, are judging, are analysing, and are criticising. Now, I just want to be clear that not all criticism is bad. We do have constructive feedback, which is incredibly valuable. Constructive feedback helps us to improve, but personal attacks help nobody. The women who develop great style are rarely the women who got it right from day one. But they are the women who got up from the stands and decided to play the game. And that takes courage. They are the women in the arena. They experimented, they made mistakes, they tried things, they changed their minds, they learned what worked, they learned what didn't work, and through that process, discovered themselves. The women who stay stuck are often waiting until they feel certain, waiting until they can't get it wrong. And that reminds me of a client I worked with a while ago. She, by her own words, called herself a perfectionist. And I think, a few people would consider themselves a perfectionist. They want to get it exactly right before presenting it to the world. We all know theoretically that it's not an ideal approach to have to life because rarely things go perfectly. But yet, it was still something she aspired to do. So my homework to her, in fact, was I wanted her to lean into getting it wrong. I wanted her to have fun and to see that we don't need to be taking this too seriously. I wanted to desensitize her to this idea of perfectionism. And the feedback from her was that as much as she tried to get it wrong, she said it still actually turned out okay. And, it turns out I can't go too far wrong. So if you're one of those people who are also waiting for, something to be perfect, for all the conditions to be right, lean the other way and see what happens, and do it with curiosity and do it playfully. But you can't wait around until you can't get it wrong or you know for sure that nobody's going to judge you, because that day never comes. But at least you came down from the stands and stepped into the arena, play the game. There are people who will always sit in the stands and they will never relate to the people in the arena. They simply can't. And often they're the ones who are typing away on their keyboards, these keyboard warriors, criticizing other people because they have no idea what it takes to do the things that the players are doing in the arena. One of the concepts I talked about in my last season of the podcast, my first season of the podcast, was thinking like a prototype. And I'm going to refer back to that again today. Most women approach style as if there is a final answer. And I mentioned this earlier. There's no end date to this. It's something that has to be nurtured. You have to keep an eye on it. There is no one day you'll have it all figured out and you'll never need to think about it again. It doesn't happen like that. Style is not a destination. It's an ongoing relationship with yourself. And the more we consider style to be identity, I think it's easier to understand that because we are aware that we evolve as people. But when we think about our wardrobes, we don't consider it to be a living, breathing entity that needs nurturing, needs attention. So the sooner we can use style and identity as a synonym, I think the better. I think it gives us a better grasp of the concept. I often think that the most stylish people out there aren't necessarily, they're definitely not the ones who are following trends. I think that's an absolute waste of time. But they are the ones who are willing to experiment. I love seeing people do something different. They test, they refine, they adjust, they repeat, they stay curious and playful. And they certainly don't listen to people sitting up in the stands who are watching the game. Something I realized when I was, stepping outside my own comfort zone and finding my own style and realizing what that is and what it means for me, I started to really appreciate other people who were doing things differently. I think it takes a lot more courage like a whole lot more courage than it does for somebody who can walk into the high street shop and buy the latest item and copy and paste it from somebody else. There's no courage in that. There's no playfulness in that. There's no individuality in that. And you'll notice, by the way, if you do decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to go for the style that I want to go for. I want to wear the loud colors. I want to do whatever it is you want to do. You will, for want of a better phrase, find your tribe. Because other people who are doing the same thing will recognize that in you. They recognize the courage. They recognize the curiosity, the creativity, the stepping out of the norm. And they know it's not easy. I know it's not easy. It's scary. But you see it in other people, and you do begin to find a circle of people who are also finding their style. And they are far more precious to you, far more important than some anonymous comment that somebody might say about your style. So I want to give you a little challenge, if I may. Ask yourself, what is one thing you've secretly wanted to try? Have a think about that. Maybe you wanted to wear sequins. Maybe you wanted to wear a scarf over your head in a funky way. Maybe you wanted to wear a pineapple skirt. Maybe a new color, a new silhouette, a print, a lipstick, a pair of glasses. Something you've admired maybe on other people, but you've never really given yourself permission to explore. It doesn't have to mean a complete reinvention, just one small experiment. And I like to encourage people to go into stores, leave the cash at home, try something that scares you but also excites you, go into the changing room, snap a photo, leave it back, and just see where that lands you. You might be surprised. It's just one small experiment, because confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes from evidence, from actions. If you're taking actions in the direction of a person you want to be, that confident person you want to be, that's where confidence comes from. You cannot wait to have the confidence first before wearing the thing. So what if your style rut isn't evidence that you've lost your way? What if it's evidence that you've outgrown an old version of yourself? Maybe it's simply a sign that you're ready for your next evolution, and that's exciting. What if the thing standing between you and that evolution isn't a lack of knowledge, it's fear of judgment? Because the people who criticized you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, may not even remember what they said, but it's living in your head rent-free. And you're still dressing according to their rules. A style rut is not a dead end. It is, think of it as an invitation, an opportunity to stop dressing for the opinions that you've inherited and start dressing for the woman you're becoming. I'll leave that there for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join my membership, this Identity and Style House, please do so. The link is down below. And if you'd like to apply to work with me on your identity-led style, then please do book a clarity call and let's talk about the possibility. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.